All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the next concurrent session of the day, Turning the Baggage into Luggage. Our presenter today is Nick Brittin from Lake Michigan College. Nick is an English professor and the current chair of communication and foreign language at the college, where he has taught since 2007. His areas of expertise include technology in the classroom, a topic on which he has given several presentations in the past 2 years and one yesterday for us. So if you have any questions for the presenter during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom room screen. We'll be able to address all of those at the end of the talk. And on that note, I will go ahead and hand it over to our presenter.
Hi there. Let me make sure. Yeah, it looks like everything's on. So I got a lot hooked up to the computer right now. So, but yeah, again, that's I did a nice job explaining who I am. I teach in at Lake Michigan College. We're a small school down here for anybody from the Midwest. You know, Michiganders are always doing this at you. We're over here by Lake Michigan, at the extreme southern part of the state. Like Indiana's basically across the street. So it's an interesting area, very diverse. So I think it's important when we're talking about technology in the classroom to consider equity in there. We have within our district, but it's a community college, and within our district we have some of the wealthiest schools in the state. We're talking, they have everything they could want: computers, technology, good Wi-Fi connections, two-parent homes, upper middle class, and literally next door, we have a school that is often, I don't know if competitive is the right word, but is in the discussion for a poorest school in the state of Michigan. And so kind of nationally, some of you might have even heard Ben Harbor schools. I hate to pick on them on something like this, but they struggle, and they're right next to a super rich school. So lots of diversity there, racial diversity, socioeconomic. We have a quickly rising population of Spanish students coming from Spanish-speaking homes. Maybe English isn't necessarily their first language. The young people, tend to pick up English pretty well, but they don't tend to necessarily get a ton of exposure to it at home. And some of them are. We have a robust ESL, EAP rather, program, and we find that those students can sometimes even be reluctant to identify. They don't. There's a certain disinclination, I guess, to being forthright about what's going on at home, which can be tricky. So I'm not coming into this. I just want to bring that up because I know that accessibility is going to range a lot. So we also happen to be next to Notre Dame. That district borders us. It's basically within sight. One of the richest universities in the country, where those students are going to have basically everything tech they could possibly want, right in the middle of a much larger city. So they have good resources. But then the other direction is farmland. So I understand that this isn't something that everybody's going to have equal access to. So I've kind of tailored it with that in mind. That we have a large range of accessibility and capability. So with that in mind, let's jump in. I try to be lighthearted with the presentation. It can be kind of a serious topic, of course. We're kind of going to try to balance that a little bit. So I titled the theme as Turning the Baggage into Luggage, Traveling to Post-Pandemic Academia. Just to sort of mention, it looks like, fingers crossed, the pandemic is turning into an endemic. So, you take good news where you can get it. It's something. It's better than where we were. Our expectation, at least in Michigan, is that we're going to be basically fully face-to-face. We're building the schedule now by the fall. We're expecting to not have a ton of restrictions, if any, by the time fall rolls around. We're now currently, just this week, became maskless on campus. We were remote only. This semester, we've had to navigate from remote to face-to-face with N95 masks, which if you've ever had to teach in an N95 is a bit of a challenge. It's you get a 2-hour lecture and breathing becomes a little trickier after a while. And then within the semester, and then now we're face-to-face, no masks. That's all within the past 6 weeks. So we gotta be able to pivot, right? Light on our feet. So let's think happy thoughts instead. So where are we going? Education will probably never be fully only face-to-face again. I think that times have simply changed. And so we've been hearing for the past couple of years, what's the new normal going to be? Well, we're about to find out, right? I mean, today's the day, and we're finding that as best we could, we made it. We're still here. We made it through the pandemic, but now we're finding that wow, we need an exit strategy. How are we going to make this work? How are we going to get back to doing what we were doing, or whatever it is we're going to be doing in the future? How do we get to that point, right? And so remote learning and these new technologies are basically here to stay. This is just the way it is now. We're not going to go back to how it was, the traditional norms. And obviously, of course, technology have been infiltrating the classroom already in a pretty major way, but now it's really there. There's the time for reluctance and, well, I'm not going to embrace the new stuff. That moment's over. It's do or die now. We have to embrace these things. So to accommodate the new world we find ourselves in, we have to develop these kind of flexible learning environments that maintain the best of face-to-face, which I think is still key. We want to have that person in the room, where we have that face-to-face contact, that physical connection, but also those new methods and technologies that do have some nice benefits. We had already been noticing, those of us who were kind of tech oriented, had noticed that, hey, sometimes remote does have some advantages. There are some neat things we can do, and then I was fortunate in that I had been sort of working with that and talking about making some hybrid models and ways to use videos. Those of you who are familiar with MIT, they had driven a lot of not everybody's familiar with MIT, but the work they had been doing. They did a lot of stuff with remote learning and how to incorporate videos, asynchronous education, these sorts of things that was sort of already there, been working there for a few years, and then we were able to, had a full bore, like all of a sudden go into it. So I was lucky that I had a little bit of a background in it. Some of my colleagues who'd been sort of more traditional, they had a steeper learning curve. And some of you probably ran into that, oh, shoot, these things I've been hearing about, wow, it's kind of the norm now. It's the way things work. So why? Why can't we just go back to how it was? Why are we here? What's the whole point? COVID, of course, it killed more than just hundreds of thousands of people. As of, I'm not even sure how many people are killing, but a lot. And even for the survivors, of course, well, now we have this post, or nearing a post-COVID world, and it did a lot of damage to our schools and our students. And so, of course, students are failing at shocking rates. Now, that data is in dispute. It depends on who you talk to, who you ask, but it does seem like failing rates are certainly higher than what they were. We've noticed that for sure, and especially with LMC, where we have like I say, that's a really robust, diverse population. It did hit the lower income harder. It did. It was the group that probably could least afford, both financially and culturally, to be out of the classroom. That was the group that got hit the hardest. And that's at least that's anecdotal from LMC's experience. But I think nationwide, the data bears that out. That this seems to be a major issue. We have to wonder, do we just stop giving grades? That was a discussion last year. I think that we ended up deciding to stick with grades, but our way of articulating and our way of conceiving of grades in the classroom, that's sort of a philosophical thing. I'm not going to get into that too much. The point of the presentation is technology, but yeah, people have proposed maybe you don't really get grades outside of school, right? It's not like you go to work, and even those of us who work in academia, we don't have, like, the dean doesn't come up to us and say, hey, you know what, B+. Yeah, can I do some extra credit? Yeah, do some extra credit, get up to an A-. It's just not something that really happens outside of the classroom. So maybe we start making the classroom look more like the real world, whatever that world is going to look like. And bad news just keeps coming, right? Maybe we have to start, instead of COVID mandates, maybe we have duck and cover mandates coming up. I don't know, maybe go back to I'm old enough to just remember the end of the Cold War, and I didn't miss it. So I'm not exactly thrilled that it looks like it might be coming back. Abandoning standardized test scores. I'm not going to say too much about that. I'm an English instructor. I think you probably can guess how I feel about standardized test scores. Without getting too political, I don't give tests in my classes. Sometimes that shocks my students, but I say I just don't like them. So this is not something I think is all that useful. I'm talking about the real world outside of the classroom. I have never been given a standardized test by an employer in my entire life. I take that back. Maybe when I was like delivering pizzas or something back in college, there was like a test score as to what the delivery range looked like, but it didn't really matter. It's not like the SAT or anything. And of course, perfect attendance probably ain't going to be a thing anymore. We have to remember that. Remember perfect attendance? It seems so archaic and quaint these days. I remember getting one of those one year, like my sophomore year of high school, I think it was, and I got perfect attendance. And that's just not going to be an option going forward. And in the college courses, of course, you don't get the certificate at the end of the semester, but you do have those um, that pressure, I guess, to go standardized. Or I'm sorry, to go with perfect attendance. So what can we do? As educators, we only have so much control. We don't dictate school policy, much less national policy, of course, right? And while we can't always predict what criteria will be used to measure student success in the future, not the failure, I need to adjust that. Rough drafts, everybody. We can adjust our approach to teaching. So remote learning seems to have had tremendous limitations, but it's not like face-to-face was always a raging success, right? So going forward, let's pack our bags, and see what we can if we can put something together that's better than what came before. So how will we get there? To get started, we should probably talk about hardware, right? So the good news, you don't need tens of thousands of dollars in equipment to make all this work, right? And I think that we probably basically have learned that right now, that we don't need labs, we don't need NASA level technology to get to put on a good remote class. Now as we're moving forward face to face, we have to adjust. We have to sort of reconceive everything again, right? So what are we going to keep with us? Pretty basic PC, Chromebook, Mac, whatever will do the trick. And you're going to need a headset. Some instructors don't use headsets. I think they really help. They really drown out noise behind you. The mic is adjustable to your face, so you can move it around a little bit. So I really like the headset. It also helps zero you in as an instructor, right? Because I think that one thing as an instructor, we have to tune out distraction. We have to get very focused on what we're doing. And it's nice to just have that blocked out, so I'm really focused on what I'm doing. They're not super expensive. What's nice about this one, it's wireless. I can move all over the place. Just a little flash drive pops into the computer, and it's wireless. It needs to be charged. It does need a charge, but they're not that. And if I were to get up and move around, I could do that, with this set. So first up, we should probably talk about learning management systems. I don't think anybody, even if you weren't using them before, you're using them now, right? I mean, that's just part of the game. And if anybody is not, then maybe let me know, how are you functioning without it, right? I mean, you need some way to communicate with students when they aren't in class. And so yeah, we need something. We're probably going to, like I said before, we're going to move away from encouraging perfect attendance. And so students are going to sometimes miss. We're just going to see more absenteeism than we used to. Or, and I'm talking about this more later on, most of my classes anymore are going to be hybridized. So they're going to be both face-to-face and through Zoom. Because I tell my students, if you have any symptoms, and I don't mean just COVID, if you have any symptoms that you think you could give to somebody else and they don't want those symptoms, just Zoom into class. We don't need to spread, because it's not like flu went away, right? I mean, COVID is obviously been, public enemy number one, but flu is still there. And to be honest with you, I don't want rhinovirus. I don't want a cold. I don't want stomach flu, any of that sort of stuff. Nobody else does either. Maybe some benefits. Maybe the world we're going to is going to be, that could be a nice thing. Maybe we'll just be sick less often in the future, right? And so, we may even go remote for flu outbreaks. I think that our society now is now aware of communicable disease in a way that we weren't really thinking about it before. And so I would not be surprised at all if a particularly nasty flu comes through. Let's say those of you who I was teaching already when swine flu went through, like, was that 12 years ago, 13 years or something like that? How old am I? I have no idea. It was a long time ago. And there was talk of going remote even then. Now, we didn't have quite the technology at that time. So we got just this close to going remote, and we didn't actually do it. Quick funny story. I once had a student come in, and she came to class and told me that she wasn't going to be there that day because she'd just been diagnosed with swine flu. And I was like, you could have emailed me that. I would have accepted it from an email just as easily as I'm accepting it face to face. I don't need you to tell me that you're sick with flu. So just in the future, send me an email on that one. So the popular LMSs are, of course, Canvas. There's Blackboard. Google Classroom is really popular with the K-12. And it's nice because it's less expensive. It's really accessible. And so it's not quite as robust as, say, Canvas and Blackboard are, but it works. It's fine, and the cost is pretty low. And so putting announcements up that detail the day's plans or reviews the day's session for the students who didn't attend or even those who did, it can be nice to have that there. And so another thing that's nice about it is I create videos. I might have a bullet point about this later on, but I'll just jump into it, where I teach English, like I say, and so essay structure becomes a big deal. And so let's say we're talking about a classic essay versus a Rogerian essay and so on and so forth. If you're not an English instructor, don't worry, that doesn't but trust me, they're set up differently. And we can go over it in class, and so the student might say, okay, cool, when I look at the board, that makes sense what the instructor talked about. But then they get home and they say, what was he talking? With me, it was always math. I'd go to like a math class and it would make so much sense when the instructor worked the problem out on the board. And I'd say, I get it. I finally understand how to do this graphing thing or whatever it was we were working on the day that was confusing me. And I'd feel so confident, and I'd go home and I'd get my homework out. Nothing. I would have no idea what the instructor had talked about. I would have no idea what to do, right? So these videos for the students who need a quick refresher, hey, how does the theory work with the claims? How do we place an argument in context? Quick 5 or 10 minute video you can put up on Canvas. That works for face-to-face students as well. That's not something, even once we go back to the classroom, I'm going to keep doing those videos because students find them really useful. Now you have to become a little bit of a presenter. Instructors, we've always been performers, right? We've always had a certain performance element to our presentation style. And now we have to be even more, we're literally on camera now. The classroom has become like reality TV in a way, right? And so you don't want the temptation to make them too jazzy and too YouTubey. Don't give in to that temptation. Make it fun, but keep in mind you're not a YouTube influencer, so just make the video short and sweet. Keep it exciting, but you don't want to put in a bunch of, don't make it too silly. And so, of course, you can also keep lessons, schedules, assignments organized, that sort of thing. It allows for quick updates to things. My classes, we inevitably end up a little bit behind schedule. So boom, you just go into Canvas, adjust it, and you're ready to go. And so, like I've been saying, the classes are probably going to be a mix of face-to-face and remote, and we're going to have to figure out the terminology of that. At LMC, we've been debating what do we call these new things, and because hybrid kind of meant something else back in before COVID, and now it's sort of meaning something different. The language is changing, and so, but yeah, it's going to be some sort of mix of the remote, the technology, and then face-to-face too. Keep in mind too, sometimes people get skeptical, right? They get a little skeptical about this level of technology, and they think, and I think there are some who think that technology can replace a good instructor. It really can't. Like it can enhance a good instructor. It's a tool, but it's not a replacement. And so I think we have to keep that in mind, that being a good educator is still being a good educator. We just have more tools available to us. Okay. And so sometimes instructors say, but I don't know how to do this stuff. I don't know how to get all this stuff done. And I say, well, you don't really know how to publish a book either, probably, right? I mean, you don't really know much about the publishing process unless you happen to know about the book. I don't know how to publish a book, but I know how to assign the reading. I know how to make an assignment about the book. That's all the technology is. I don't need to know exactly how it entirely works from top to bottom. I just need to know that it does. Okay. You probably can't take your car apart and put it back together. Some of you can, most of you probably can't, but you know how to drive it around. I know some of you probably in cities don't even have cars. In Michigan, you got to have a car. Everything is 10 miles away. Now, well, with that in mind, we could also have discussion features, right? Which has certainly been something that we've been doing. Now, you want to have good discussions. There's always that keep in mind when you're drawing up your discussions that students are, especially Zoomers today. That's what I call the youngest generation. I think we've all sort of settled on that. These Zoomers desperately want to agree with each other, right? I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but if you put a discussion up, people will say, yes, I agree. Yes, I agree with that. Oh, but a great point. I agree with that too. This is not a confrontational group of people. I'm a Gen Xer, and so we were confrontational. We love to argue, but this new group, they like to, at least in formal settings, they very much don't want to rock the boat. So you want to put discussions out there that encourage perspective. That you want to somehow put that out there. So you might even say like, I know some of you are going to disagree. I know some of you have different perspectives on this. So please give that perspective here. Put that right there in the discussion. Give them permission to be themselves. Give them permission, encourage them to bring their own ideas to the table. Don't, and tell them an argument's not, in academia, an argument is not people fighting. Okay, it's not people yelling at each other. It's not the news, which frankly has devolved into just, is it news? It's entertainment at this point. But it's just people fighting. I said, don't do that. Don't do what you see on like Fox and CNN and all those talking heads. An academic argument is a discussion. An academic argument is people putting forth an idea, changing, evolving, expressing themselves, disagreeing, but respectfully and reasonably. And of course, yeah, you can keep doing these discussions in face-to-face classes. It's interesting, if you have a shy student, I have students who simply don't like to talk in class. And we all do, right? We've all run with a student, perfectly brilliant, great minds, but they just don't like to talk. They have a little bit of stage fright. Public speaking is a major fear in society. And so, but if you say, yeah, we're going to just think about this for a while, and then put it up on discussions, and have everybody, if you have the benefit of, I love this headset, but it tends to turn off on me for no reason. Maybe I should have spent more than $30 on it. Yeah, we were already communicating through our screens before the pandemic. And so just incorporate that. Just say, look, students like to communicate through their screens. So we'll, even if you're face to face, put up on the board or at a discussion, you'll be surprised. Some of the students who've been sitting there silently, if you have that discussion and you just put it up on the projector, and they can use their phones for a lot of these things too, you'll be amazed at how many students have a lot of stuff to contribute. And so that quiet kid might be sitting there thinking the best thoughts of, oh, it might be having some really brilliant stuff that you can put up there. And so that was one benefit I saw of the pandemic, is when we were remote, I had students in my remote classes when we were using Zoom, and I'd had them in face-to-face classes before, and they never said a word. They just sort of sat there quietly. As soon as you get them on Zoom, now they're boom, they're firing off. Now the inverse was also true. Students who like to talk in public and in the classroom suddenly weren't saying a darn thing in the classroom. Or in Zoom rather. So it's switch. You want to have that nice balance, that nice mix of the student who wants to talk, boom, can raise their hand, speak their mind. The student who'd rather type, boom, that's available to them as well. Yeah, now as far as this fall, my classes are going to all be kind of a combination of face-to-face and hybrid. What I mean by that is, instead of meeting for 3 hours a week, in like 2 hour-and-a-half long blocks, we're only going to meet for 2 1-hour blocks. Okay, and so that will give us that connection, and then there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff online too. That third contact will be online. So we're having Hawks courseware in my composition classes, of course. That's nice. The recorded videos, discussions, these sorts of things. So that way we have that. The student can come into the class expecting that there's going to be less time with me, but then more time on the computer. But that's hopefully the balance I'm hoping to strike, is 2 hours of face-to-face and that extra 1 hour of like that, building a sort of catalog, a library. We use Canvas. I'm going to build I've built a sort of catalog library type thing. I'm right there on Canvas for us. So students can just expect to refer to that throughout the semester. And if anybody has anything they want to talk about, just put it up there. I've shared my screen, so I might not be able to see it exactly, but that question and answer, you can feel free. I move quickly. I understand everybody's different experiences, so feel free to pop stuff in as you want. We can get to it. So next, we aren't really limited anymore to just handing out papers, collecting, grading, turning them back. There's different ways of doing things now. And so we've had to be creative, and so we have new types of assignments. In English class, it used to be quick writing assignments, longer essays, another quick writing assignment, another long essay. And we had different ways of it, but now it's very multimodal. Right now we have a whole bunch of options available to us. And so, for example, some of the assignments I like to do, pen and paper is great, but now we have all these different types. And so we have what I call pick your own, double check my time here. We have what I call pick your own path and electronic textbooks. And let me show you real quick. I'm going to close this out. I'm going to show you one of the electronic textbooks. So this is one I did for class. And so I'll just present it. And so this is pretty ugly, right? This one's not done. One of my areas of study is witch hunts and alternative power structures throughout society. It's weird, but a lot of macabre, monstery. Who do we label as monster in society? And so this right here, this is a presentation. And so if I click push, now it takes me to this next one. And then so here's what was life in Salem, like 1692 like. And so then right here, I can click this, and it takes me to this page. Okay, so now what if I want to go back? So I have this button that would go back. So I'm going to right click on it and link. Okay, and I'm going to slides in this presentation, and I want to go back to slide 2. Okay, so now I just did that. This wouldn't have done anything before. So I'm going to go here. Let's present again. And so, all right, I'm going to click on this, takes me there. And then if I want to go back, boom, I just click, it takes me right back. That's just a presentation thing that we've been doing as instructors, that we've done that before. Well, now a student can create this and make a digital textbook. And then these here link to websites, different websites out there. And so we could go, oh, that actually does not. It links to not to a website, but some of them do, right? Now, another one, so that's digital textbook, and that would maybe serve as a different way of presenting information, not just an essay, right? So maybe have them do some essays, have them do things like this. Be good for history classes, sociology, that sort of thing. If you want that more creative component, and I can't get to it because the thing won't go away. So then we have this. This is like a short story. So sometimes in my literature classes, I let the students do this, and so I call it "Pick Your Own Path," just because I'm terrified Choose Your Own Adventure might be copyrighted, don't want to get in trouble. So pick your own path. So you click on it, and then it has this nice story that sort of prepares who you are. And so for this, it was to show power structures, right? Discourse, kind of in that Foucauldian sort of way of thinking about it. And so we click on this, and you get here, and your car doesn't work, and you have to go get financial aid. And so you can text a friend to see if he'll give you a ride, or you can see if you can figure it out on your own. And you pick in each one of these links to a different part within the presentation. And so you have to decide, like, well, he doesn't want to help. He seems a little reluctant. Do I push it, or do I just say, look, I'll just figure it out on my own? And so I'll figure it out on my own. And so I'm just talking about being, in this presentation, it's about being poor, being low income. I'm not a big fan of the word low income because I grew up low income. And I just think it romanticizes it. Let's just call it what it is. It's poor, right? It's not fun, and it doesn't need to be prettied up. It is what it is. And so yes, you can do these different types of whoops. Oh, I didn't mean to click on that. Whoops. So yeah, so you have these different types of assignments here that you can do. And when you think about it, a modern cell phone is basically a recording studio in your pocket. Most students are going to have a pretty decent cell phone anymore. They're even the lower income students or the poorer students are going to have these cell phones. They're just part of society. Now, you're not always, but I would say it's safe to say a pretty solid majority of your students now, you could have them make videos. And that can be another way of doing things. Just have them upload it to Canvas or whatever your learning management system is. And you can do that too. Interviews, these sorts of things. Lots of options with these phones. These phones have capabilities now that would have been thousands of dollars if they existed at all when I was a kid. So it's actually kind of cool. If they want to use the phone anyways, bring it in as a tool. Now, Zoom, of course, we're going to keep using Zoom. And thank goodness. The main campus for me is about a 35-minute drive away, and they love to call these meetings that I don't really need to go to. So I can just Zoom into them now. They're basically all going to be Zoom from now on, which is awesome. I don't need to drive an hour to go to a meeting that could have been an email. But you can use it to teleconference, of course, with students or your colleagues. But you can also use it to record lectures. They're recording this lecture here. So simply start a meeting, don't invite anyone, and then share your screen and press the record button. And you'll ask you, do you want to share it to your computer or to the cloud? Super easy, takes just a few seconds, and boom, you've got yourself a video. Now, you do need a camera enabled, of course. But yeah, you can make some pretty nice videos that way. Are they going to be Oscar award winning? Probably not. They don't really need to be. They can be pretty good though. And then you can just distribute it to your students, put it out there up on Canvas. Now, my classes, like I say, tend to be split between the Zoomers and the Roomers, right? So those on Zoom and those actually in the room with me. That can be an obstacle because lectures and activities need to be designed for two different audiences effectively, right? They're consuming the content in two different ways, and that needs to be, so I have to keep that in mind, right? That I have to give them both equal amounts of time and energy. And so, sort of like the printing press, as that increased literacy, it led to widespread. Now that took hundreds of years. Printing press was invented in the 1400s. We didn't really get widespread literacy until like the 1900s. COVID came along and made us pretty darn tech literate. We're pretty Zoom literate at this point in a matter of a couple years. To the point that students, I think, are pretty confident with it now. And so we need to they're maybe aware of that there's going to be a lot of zooming in the class now, and I think they've come to terms that they've come to expect it and accept that. Even today, I taught a literature class this morning, contemporary fiction, and a student said, "Yeah, I don't have COVID, but my mom was diagnosed with it, so just in case, I'm going to zoom in to class today." Thanks, perfect, awesome. He still was able to get a part of the discussion. He was still be able to be a part of it, and nobody else was at risk. And so yeah, so this will be, it's leading to a new type of literacy that's going to take a little time. There's going to be growing pains, but I think it's worth doing. Now, you will need a good headset to speak to the Zoomers, but you also have to have that eye and ear on the roomers as well. I don't use a headset like this in class because it covers my ears and I can't, like that focus I was talking about earlier. I don't want to not hear somebody in the classroom. Okay, this isolates me too much. But you can get these nice headsets. Jabber makes some really nice ones, kind of like what you see this lady have. And so it looks like those headsets that like telemarketers are probably wearing. And so this just covers the one ear, has a mic here. And I don't like I wear that when I'm in class. I don't like doing it for this situation because I want to be zeroed in. I want to be focused just on this. I want to cut out that external stimuli. But it's really nice when you're in the classroom with other people who you don't want to cut out to just have that one ear exposed so that you can hear everybody too. And so you do have to keep that in mind, that you want to be able to split your attention. This also helps because some students, and we've been wrestling with this for years, some students simply aren't great in a classroom setting. And so we've talked about student success. Some people are just good at school, right? They're just good at being in a classroom and doing the traditional classroom thing. Okay, I was very fortunate in that despite being, from a low income background, I was pretty good at school. Now, I don't have to, but there's other students maybe who aren't. And so they're perfectly bright, brilliant people, but they don't do great in that situation. So this allows us to adjust, it allows us to give different learning styles. Maybe some students do want to be at home and they can zoom in and get information. Now, as far as webcams, you're going to want a good webcam too. I'm going to open up a second. I actually have two here. I have no idea if this is going to be on the correct angle, but I'm going to switch my camera real quick just to show you guys how this would work. I'm using kind of a traditional, stop sharing here. I'm using a traditional webcam here, those little guys that stuck to the top of the computer screen. I'm going to switch to this camera. Doink. And who knows what, oh, that's the top of my head. So this one's up here. Okay, so now I'm looking at my screen, but you can see the top of my head. That's what the top of my head looks like. So I'm going to get away from that because obviously this isn't a great angle. What's nice about this though, boom, and we're back, is this camera here. Boom, it's no longer doing anything, and you can't quite see it that well. Oh heck, it's on the next. Let's go back to the presentation. It's on the slide. I got a picture of it. So this guy right here, this is really nice. Now the webcam that you got stuck on top of your monitor, those are like 40, 50 bucks, 30 bucks, something like that. These guys are pricier. So these guys are more like $400. Now they're nice because they come with microphones. And this little webcam here, it's only going to show kind of what's in front of it, right? Whereas this guy that we're seeing on the slide shows the whole room. It's got like an autofocus on it. And so especially if you have one of these wireless headsets, you can still walk around really nicely and the students on Zoom can see you and still engage with you a little bit. These guys here, they're sometimes called document readers. So if you do want to show some documents to them, you can show it, really nicely. It has a really nice crisp. Like let's say, you might have noticed here, if I were to bring up, like here's my schedule that I scribbled on a little bit. If I try to hold this up and it doesn't really work all that well, it just sort of covers me up. With the document reader, yeah, it shows it really nicely and shows, so you can show documents really well, books or what have you. And so it's a little bit better camera, also shows the classroom, behind you. So if you're now $400 might be a lot to take out of pocket, so if you don't have a department budget to work with, this is something maybe to talk to your admins, your department heads about, like, hey, we need to get a few of these. These are really nice, and you can position them. You can put them all over the room. So it's really nice. I should probably put this back on slideshow because it looks silly. Did I just leave it like it was? Now we have this idea of the students. We want to keep in mind that it's not just us going on this trip, right? We're not the only people making an adjustment here. We have to think about what's life been like for them. And it's going to be stressful, that some of these kids have spent a couple years, their entire collegiate experience has been kind of Zoom based. Transportation hasn't been an issue. Those of us in the north, snow becomes a problem, right? Where the snow is just now melting here in Michigan. And it does, like overnight, all of a sudden you get a blizzard, boom, roads are covered in ice and snow. That's a problem. And so now the students have to worry about starting to go places. They can't just, they're actually face to face interacting with each other. With students, they got to wear something other than pajama pants, right? They can't just wear their pajamas to class. And that can be stressful, right? It's a definite change of environment. So we want to keep them in mind, that it's not just challenges for us, but it's challenges for them. If a student really kind of develops their collegiate impression through a digital remote type setting, coming back to the classroom can have, it can be a culture shock for them. It's almost like going to college a second time, right? It sort of brings some of that newness back. So with all that in mind, keep in mind that the tech enhances what we're doing. It's not there to replace us. This is a tool. It makes us more capable. It's not us though. Without a human driving it, it doesn't do anything. Like that plane can't really land itself, right? Although they might be able to. Maybe that's not a great example. So it's been tricky. But hopefully we've learned something, and in a way we might be able to look back on this and say, hey, this was a beneficial time, because now we do have way more tools in the tool chest than we've ever had before. We had to develop all these skills, and now if we come back to a world that now that we're all teched up and we're good and we know what we're doing, go back to a world that maybe isn't riddled with disease, and now we're going to be better, right? I'm kind of excited about the future, because I think it could be, pretty good times. We have these resources available. So with that in mind, do we have any questions, comments? Feel free to be critical too. Maybe, oh, what the hell are you talking about, Brittin? Critique me if you want.
No questions in so far, but I'll just mention a quick reminder for everyone that you can submit questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom room screen.
I think I just did that good a job. I don't see any questions coming. It was another brilliant performance.
Must be.
All right. So,
give it a minute here, see if anybody has anything they want to ask about.
We have one.
Got a couple coming in.
Okay. Yeah. So Monica says, yeah, that she provides her students with a set of guidelines for crafting post-it discussion questions. That's a good idea. Now you don't want to overdo it. And so we, because you don't want to tell them kind of exactly, you want them to be able to express themselves. But yeah, you do want to have those steps that, hey, this is what a good response should be. It's not Facebook where you just say either click like on it or verbally berate the person. Right. That seems to be what Facebook is, pretty trollish these days. So you do want to get that engagement, but yeah, having those guidelines. And then Scott asks, does your college consider classes seated or distance encoding? I'm not quite sure. Do you mean, I think I know kind of what you're getting at, but maybe if you could clarify just a little bit. Okay. So yeah. So for hybrid, I think what you're talking about. Okay, I think I got it. You're talking about my hybrid system. We have 5 modalities now for billing. We consider them. We have a pretty simplified system, and so basically, if there's a face-to-face component, including through Zoom, then it's treated as a face-to-face class, as far as billing and that sort of thing goes. As far as I know, that's not something I tend to deal with too much. So yeah, so we're kind of treating Zoom as equivalent to face-to-face, actually being in the room. So yeah, that's how we do it. Now different schools are going to handle that differently, and I've noticed that that the different tuition rates. Currently, LMC, we were able to get some grants, and so we have a free tuition right now. So it's no cost to go for the next year or so. We've been doing that since the pandemic started. I know a lot of schools don't have that option, but that's how we've been dealing with it. And I think that we decided before the pandemic that we were going to treat Zoom as face-to-face. And then do I still see students having problems with accessing the technology? Yes, primarily because we have a lot of farmland. And so some students live in the country, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It's a weird area. We have cities of, 250,000 people over here, and then a community of 100 people over here, no internet. Luckily, students, if they haven't had a hard time accessing the internet, is usually the main thing. They have the devices, they just don't have a great Wi-Fi connection. Hotspotting your phone works pretty nicely. Our cell coverage is probably makes up, I think, in a lot of areas for the lower Wi-Fi, and so students can hotspot their phone and then connect their computer to that. It's not that difficult. That's something that sometimes freaks people out. Oh my God, how would I do that? It's a button. You push a button on your phone and you push a button on your computer and it's done. So that's not that big a deal. And a lot of people know how to do that. A lot of students. That's just sort of like part and parcel of being a young person today, is they tend to know how to do that. So Monica responds with yeah. So Monica, she says that she tells them, don't just agree or disagree, come up with something, come up, say something, right? I think that's what Monica's getting at there. And yeah, that's important because we want, the students want to kind of hide back in there. They want to tuck in. Their cell phone's a safe space for them. And that's fine. The cell phone's a nice device, but you want to get out there a little bit. You want to say, look, it's okay to have opinions. Doesn't mean you have to yell and hate each other. Just have an opinion. Back up your argument. So yeah, that's important.
All right. Any other questions from anyone? Got a few more minutes here. If anybody does have anything.
If anything comes up to you, can always email me too. I will talk about this stuff indefinitely. In fact, Notre Dame just came up last week to look at, we have a VR lab and they just came up last week to see what we're doing. And so, but I'll talk about this too. So classic English instructor. I love the sound of my own voice. So,
all right. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions,
okay, cool.
So we can just end a few minutes early here. So we just go ahead and say a quick thank you to Nick, and thank you to everyone who attended, especially Nick. I know you had a presentation yesterday, one today. So between the 2 days, appreciate all the valuable information that you've been able to share with us. I know I've enjoyed them, so I hope everyone else has as well. Now, the next concurrent sessions will begin at 4 p.m. Eastern time today. You can view the chat to see a list of all of the session meeting room links, or to access the conference website for a complete list of all the concurrent sessions that are ongoing. I'll be pasting that link in just a moment. Now, while accessing the conference website, please do not forget to swing by the exhibit hall if you have not already. This will be your last chance to hop in, view a quick 5-minute demonstration, and be entered to win our hourly giveaway. And once again, that is a choice of a 6-month Audible subscription, a 1-year subscription to Disney Plus, or a $100 Amazon gift card. So if you have not hopped in there yet, please go ahead and do that before the next session so you can enter for your chance to win one of those good prizes. So on that note, I'll say another quick thank you to Nick. Thank you for everyone who attended, and hopefully we'll see you all at the next session.
We'll see you later. Thanks.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Trevor.